So I have this is one of my stickers I have that's no shoulding allowed. Don't should on your clients. I'm sure I have stickers back there, but you can see me afterwards for more stickers too. And I have a couple bookmarks and some things. But people often focus on what people should do and they don't think about why people do what they do. And everybody comes with unique experiences on how they grew up and how they've taken in information from other people. Two people raised in the same town, in the same house, can have completely different money beliefs and values and goals. So it's very interesting. We want to talk about, there's a lot of research on this. I'm going to talk about several tools that you can use, and we'll talk about whether or not you guys have ever done them yet and what your experience is like. All right. Maybe I do want a mic. All right, so we're going to look at 3 different areas. So we have relational influences, emotional, and then how people identify. Family messages, and then emotional triggers. And it's just a lot of really fun stuff. All right. I want you to think about one money message you heard growing up. Was it spoken directly, or was it something you learned by watching? So take this question and talk to somebody near you and talk about a money message you learned growing up. All right, does anybody have any examples they want to share? I share yours, Daniel.
My first money memory was me putting some coin in my mouth. My mom told me it was dirty.
Yeah, money's dirty. He put a coin in his mouth and his mom told him that money was dirty. Like, that is pretty common too. And it really can stick with you a long time. What do you have?
I just remember all the cars my parents had were always used. So like my first car as a kid was my mom's car, which was my grandmother's car before that. Kind of thing. We always bought used cars.
So in his family, I'm doing this for the folks watching, in his family, cars were always used and hand-me-downs, basically. Grandma to mom to you. Yeah, that sticks with you, I bet. What else? Go ahead, Cherry.
One of my first memories is I was sharing every Friday when my mom got her paycheck. My sister and I each got $5, and we could go order out what we call ordering out. Order a cheesesteak, soda, and a bag of chips in Philadelphia. Each of us with our $5, and I never thought about how that probably shaped my adulthood, thinking that when you get paid, that's when you go spend. Right, I connected those two early on in my life.
All right, so when her mom got paid, each kid got $5 to go buy dinner on Friday night. And that really shaped how she thought about money and paychecks. You can go spend as soon as you get a paycheck, right? All right, Kate?
I think one of my earliest memories to me in hindsight was very interesting. When I was in the car with my mother and my 2 brothers. And we pulled up to the gas station because we didn't have enough gas for her to go home and get to work the next day. But she only had 2 cents in her pocket in her purse, and she asked us to all see what we had with us. And between the 4 of us, it was like 42 cents, and it was enough then to get a gallon of gas.
Oh my gosh.
To do that. But we didn't have a sense of shame or that she was.
This is just teamwork.
And it was sort of, in a way, kind of positive in that even though it was very little, we shared it and solved the problem together, and that was it. And it was just sort of, money wasn't something you never talked about.
Very good. So in your family, a memory is your mom didn't have enough gas to get home and then back to work the next day, and she only had a couple cents, so that way she asked all the kids to kind of find what they had and chip in, and it worked out. And that is, what great teamwork. Now imagine what kind of things your clients are still operating from these thoughts and the things that they've learned from generations. One of the things This is a very complicated slide, so don't worry about learning it or reading it or anything like that. But mapping family history is something that I really love to do with clients. I've done it myself. I did it for college in my master's in counseling, and it can be applied to finances. I do a 4-hour class on genograms, and you take all of these symbols and you see the two central people, the husband and the wife. They have their ex-wife, their ex-husband. They have their parents. Usually you have 4 to 5 generations. So grandparents, parents, yourself, your kids, and maybe your grandkids. So then you start figuring out, where did I learn these things from, right? Are there things that are happening generation to generation, either good or bad? And so you'll see green lines and red line. Red line's not good, green lines are good. And all these things have different meanings. And like the jagged line is hostile. And then there's a little different with physical abuse and emotional abuse. But all of these things can be used to kind of map your family history and learn, what did I learn from those people who came before me? And this couple was so fantastic to work with. One of the things with this couple is they hadn't really talked about money together, second marriage. And when they sat down with me and they did this exercise and they came back together, what they realized is they were thinking, well, my ex-husband did money this way and we had so many problems with this. She's thinking that's going to be the same thing with her new husband. And then he had the same thing. Well, this is the way my wife spent money and it was horrible and blah, blah, blah. You know, so, but this gave them the opportunity to talk about it. They have some situations with their kids, stepkids and kids, and people don't talk to each other because this one kid has some addiction problems and you give her all the money and you bail her out of everything and we get nothing. So they all hate each other, right? So it was really great working with them. With a genogram, just some of the things that you can do, or people you can use them with, are couples who aren't comfortable communicating about money yet. This is like you have them each do their own, and then we sit down and we just talk about it. And it's kind of non-threatening because they're looking at their thing, not looking at each other. And it's a little less non-threatening. People who have generational discussion discomfort, like they don't want to talk about what happened with their parents and grandparents. They don't want to talk about their ex-wife or ex-husband. It can be a really good thing. People with chronic debt. Intergenerational poverty, family conflict around money, and trauma-informed cautions. So we ask, is there something that's been done in past generations that is related to your personal situation now? What's one money message you heard growing up is a good question, right? Who handled the money in your home? So they can diagram this. You can add whatever symbols you want to. It's pretty cool. We use dollar signs for things, you know how restaurants do $1 sign, $2 signs, 3. So they can kind of gauge on a sliding scale how bad or good this was. What pattern are you repeating or actively trying to break? Those are really interesting. And then talk about what kind of emotions came up when they were going through this exercise. See that tumbleweed down there? She has a spiritual connection to her dog. It's always interesting. I love to learn. One of my favorite questions when I'm doing intake with a client is tell me about the people and things that are important in your life. And for her, that probably would have never come out if I asked that question. It would, but it came out in our genogram too. And some people, I have a lot of single people who their pet is so important to them, right? All right. The next area is about emotions. Anybody used a wellness wheel before? All right, I'm going to show you what the different categories are but I just want to show you what that looks like. There are 10 circles inside the circle. So you're going to, when you do it, I suggest you do it. When you do it, you fill out how do I feel about each of these areas? 1 to 10, 0 to 10. So let's talk about this. Physical health. Physical health impacts finances. So when they fill out physical health, where are they on that? I was talking with somebody last night, and he's like, I'm 60 years old. I used to be in really great shape. And then I got into personal finance, and now I need to get in shape again because health is wealth, right? And he's like, I neglected my health while I was building this financial business. And now I need to get back into it. So he was like, I would put myself, because I did this at a conference yesterday, I would put myself at a like 6 or 7 for that. So then let's look at home. Do you feel like you're going to lose your home? Do you feel safe at home? Is your home in good shape? Like there's all kinds of things you can think about with your home related to finance. And it's very emotional for people. And spirituality, it can be anything from religion to just how you feel about yourself as a person in a whole. And then your career, where are you in your career? Are you a 0? Are you a 10? Are you in the middle somewhere? And it's really fun. So you have a different color for each of the 10 a lot of times, and it makes a pretty little graph. Mental health is a big one. If our mental health isn't right, if our clients' mental health isn't right, sometimes they're struggling a lot in all the areas with their finances. And then relationships. How are our relationships? Everybody knows if somebody's going through a divorce, they had a recent death, like there's so many things out there that impact. Your kids don't want to talk to you anymore when they're adults. You know, I see a lot of that on the social media. Is the whole my parents don't ever see my grandkids. They only want to take pictures with them. And then I think about all my house, right? Crazy people. Recreation. Are you doing fun things? Who are you doing them with? Ooh. All right, so I don't like it when these do that. Okay. So some of the questions you can ask are, what would your life look like if this category was a 5 instead of a 2? Right? So you can have them walk through and talk about it that way. Tell me how you can increase your score in this area. What's one thing you could do? What's a category that you could improve by 1 point tomorrow? And what would that look like? What would you need to do that? We're not fixing anything. We're not giving advice. We're being curious. Curious is a wonderful thing when you're working with clients. I think it automatically went last time. Okay. And then finances, of course, is its own category. And how do people feel about that? So if you've never done a wellness wheel, there's a lot of them out there on the internet. You can search it. And I will put some of the links in the app after we're done here today. This is another financial well-being assessment, and this is just an example of part of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau financial well-being assessment. That's really interesting. I remember years ago they had one question. I'm like, well, if my money is really good, this one question scores me wrong, right? So they had to fix one of the questions. It was like, but what if I have all my savings? And what if, like it was just thinking about people who were maybe not doing so well. So I said, you need to change your question. That's a really good one. For the military, on the FinRed website, FinRed USA Learning, they have this also. So this is something, I was part of the developing the pilot program for the Army Holistic Health to Fitness. And this is one of the things we used to evaluate how people were doing. So the first time they take the assessment, a lot of times people have like overconfidence and they're like, oh yeah, I'm great, 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 great. And so then they had to take it at 6 months. And so I said, we have to be careful because at 6 months, because they've had the education now, their score could very well be lower. So we really had to look at the first one and the last one, but they took it 3 times in that pilot program. It was really interesting just to have people do it and see what they thought. So when we start to understand the client's why, we can tie into behavior change and focus on transformation. Another one of my favorite quotes. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So how are you using the data from your assessment? So you've got a client, you've got this data, this information. How is that informing the interaction with you and the client?
So there is a whole handout on the CFPBA website on how to use the information. So that's a great thing to go and read through and get different ideas on how I use it to open up conversations about all of these topics. Was there one question that stuck with you that you're like, I think I'd like to be better in that area or whatever, or I need to know more about this. So, but there is a great handout there. When you do a search for this on the CFPBA website, at least it's still there. It was when I made this a month ago. Any other questions about emotional connections? But you see how the emotions that people are having right now can affect how they spend their money, how they invest their money, how they think about their money. And it helps for us to know, even if we're doing social media, we need to know what our clients are thinking. The majority, think about your avatar client. Who's your go-to client and what are their pain points, right? And how are we going to help them move from here to there? So it can be used in many ways. Social media, client appointments. I love that. And Money Habitudes. Anybody used Money Habitudes before? Few? I have been using Money Habitudes for over 15 years. And it's really a non-threatening way to really explore how people identify. So this one's identity. So we had relationships, emotional, and now we have identity. There's also the Klontz money scripts. And then one of the books that I'm doing for a book study this year, she talks about money scripts, but doesn't use Klontz's. She just talks about those money beliefs people grow up with and that hold on to after they're grown. And that was really interesting to read because it's not just narrowing it down to 4 types or 6 types. It's any message that you carry with you for a long period of time. So I have a couple examples. So in Money Habitudes, you have a deck of cards, or they have the online version, and you have a statement on one side of the card and you say, this is me. Sometimes this is me. That's not me. And it really helps. I do this on cruise ships a lot now. It's a wonderful retirement life. And they'll sit there and they'll do their things. And nobody knows there's these things on the back side of the card, right? Because unless they watch somebody else do it. But they learn what are their strongest areas or what do they identify with the most. And so security, I'm going to give you some examples for each of the areas. So I have somebody who has an emergency, but they don't want to take money out of their emergency fund because they're worried about their security. That happens all the time. Well, I'm just going to put it on my credit card. Why do we have 3 months of savings if you're not going to use it for an emergency? I had a retired couple, and he was complaining about her knitting and crocheting in retirement. They've been retired 3 years. They have plenty of money. They have pensions. And he came in and he said, oh, I really want to do this Money Habitudes thing with my wife because, she spends way too much money on all her crafts in retirement. And it was a fantastic experience for them. They each had their own deck of cards. They sat down, they did them, and he realized that that's what they saved for them to do the things they loved in retirement. And it doesn't cost very much money for yarn if you're not buying the whole thing, the whole store. And then status, this is from my most recent cruise. She was really surprised that she was high in status. But then when we dug into it and we figured it out, she was high in status, because a lot of people think status is negative, right? I got to have these jeans, I got to have this phone, I got to have the latest version of whatever. I got to have a new car all the time. I had people who got a new car every 50,000 miles. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, you're wasting so much money. Anyway, got to keep my bias out of it though. But she was a realtor. And for her, what was important was to dress nice, to show houses, and to have a nice car to drive people around to the houses in. And that's where all her status cards were coming up. It was really interesting to have that discussion and for her to realize, oh, I'm spending so she's trying to figure out how to spend less because she's in the middle of a divorce and all that crazy stuff. All right. So planning, everybody in this room is probably high in planning. That's just the way we are. That's the hard part about when you do this. So I do have some cards with me if you want to do it at some point if you've never done it before. So I have a couple who never traveled. They saved and saved and invested and invested and saved and talked about traveling. He did buy a Corvette though in his retirement. And one day he was driving in his Corvette to go to lunch with the grandkids and the great grandkids. And they were in a car accident on the way and they never got to travel. And then their family inherited $4 million. It's crazy, right? Like, you use the money. But he was so focused on planning for the future. He was probably a little high in security at the time. The cards have recently changed because they did a lot of research and they updated security mostly. But it's kind of sad when you see that kind of thing happen. And then I'm going to talk about one of my own. So a couple of you know, I believe in giving to my kids while I'm alive instead of giving with a warm hand instead of a cold hand is what I call that. And I have had a multi-generational house for 5 years. My son has a floor, my daughter's family has a floor, and I have a floor. And this year I decided to buy a house for my son because he wants to get married and they can start their own family, not in the chaos of 5 children, 9 and under. So I bought a house and I was really struggling because I planned. And this wasn't exactly how I planned to use my money this year. But he was like, hey, Mom, if you buy us a house, we can pay you rent and then we don't have to live with everybody. And so I bought a house and my daughter went, because I was struggling, right? Every time I took money out of investments. And she said, you're just investing in something different. And I went, oh, okay, thank you. I'm like, you do listen to me. It's my spender child. And then spontaneous. A lot of people struggle with being spontaneous with their money, especially if they're high in planning. I do a lot of work with groups of solo people on cruises too. And for me, one of the people sent a text like in September and said, hey, some of us are thinking about doing a cruise January 25th. And I went, I'm going to be spontaneous. I just booked it. My airfare's booked. My hotel's booked. Let's go. But that is not normally me. I have to practice that a little bit, right? So usually I'm planning a little farther out, but that was really fun. And that couple that were the high in security with the knitting, they were really both low in spontaneity in the spontaneous category. And one of the things that I helped them figure out after, I think we were probably there 2 hours at that event, they were going to, when they left, going to create an account or do an envelope or whatever that was set up for spontaneous engagement. If by the end of the month they hadn't used that money that they set aside, they had to use it that day. And so they were really excited about this because they're like, we just don't ever do anything just fun for no reason. So it's really great when you can help people kind of find the balance between all of these money identities. Then I have another person who is high in spontaneous, and she spent $1,800 a month, or in the first month that I worked with her, she spent $1,800 more than she made. And part of that was one of her friends said, hey, let's go on a trip. So she didn't pay her rent until late. Then she had all these fees on top of it. And then she had all the money for going on the trip. And she was notorious before she started working with me of not paying her bills. Like, she got a mattress, she never made a payment for her mattress. She had a car, she paid for that so she could get to work. And one day she says to me, after we've been working for a couple months, she said, I just like to do what I want and not worry about thinking about how much it costs. I'm like, okay, we all want to do that, but you have to have a plan. So we had to kind of get her a little bit more planning experience. And then we have giving. And giving a lot of times is tied to emotions. And I think about this category as they don't know how to say no. Like, how many people don't know how to say no? It's pretty incredible. I had a grandma in one of my classes, and she just had a daughter who went through a divorce, and the daughter and 2 kids moved in. So she gives up all the stuff she's been doing. She's paying all the bills. She's taking care of the kids so mom can go do whatever she wanted to do. And she kind of gave up too much. She was giving. And so we had to help her figure out how to say no and how to balance that out a little bit more. The first service member that I ever worked with when I was at Fort Myer in Arlington, he was sent to us at Financial Readiness because he didn't have the money to pay his cell phone bill. It was the only bill he had. And I learned from him that he came from Mexico to the States when he was 17 so he could finish high school here and then he could join the military. So he joins the military, and whenever his mom asked him for money in Mexico, she sent it there. We have to think about people's cultural backgrounds, and their beliefs are very strong, and we can't throw our biases in there, right? If we are like, you can't give all your money away. We ended up coming up with a plan, and I don't like to tell people what to do. I don't know about you guys, but I like to help them come up with ideas that work for them. So we ended up working out a plan where he sent a specific amount every month so that he could still reach his goal of wanting to buy a car when he left the DC area, going to college. He still wanted to have some college money, even though he was going to probably have the GI Bill. And his mom would still get the money she needed. He's got 5 younger siblings. 1 is in college, so he's basically helping pay for his brother's college. But he's the oldest kid, and that's what they do. I've had a lot of different cultural experiences. When I lived in Boston, tons of people underbanked and unbanked that were immigrants from the Caribbean. I don't know why they go to Boston, because it's cold there, but there's a lot in Boston, and it's a high cost of living area. So anyway, and then carefree. So I had somebody who just, the carefree people are like, whatever, it'll take care of itself. I had somebody who his first paycheck went out and bought an expensive pair of Doc Martens. Then he was like, I need to check my balance. So at work one night, he checked his balance on the ATM machine like 20 times. I'm like waiting to see if something had gone through yet. So we had to call the bank together and get all those charges removed because he overdrawn because they charged him like $3 every time he checked his balance. So I've seen a lot. And then I have widows basically who have never been responsible for money before. And they're used to being able to just buy the groceries they need. They don't ask, do we have enough money for it? They just do it or whatever. And they didn't pay the bills. So there's a lot of carefree that we see there. All right. Couple questions. What'd you learn about money growing up? That's a really good question to ask clients. I like to use how and what and not why. Why feels like a threat. What financial behavior shows up when you're feeling stressed, right? That's related to the emotional. So we have relationship, emotional. And which financial goal feels emotionally charged? So if the belief still influences you, imagine how strongly those beliefs resonate with our clients. And they don't know it. We can recognize it and we can fight against it. But it's something that they don't. So in my experience program, we practice difficult client conversations and situations 1 week every cohort. And they can get emotional, people can cry. I'm going to just put all of them up here. So what do you do when a client gets emotional? I've worked with a lot of people who were like Stacy, survivor outreach. And one of my good friends in the program said, I cry with them, but I invested in waterproof mascara. Because, you know, a lot of times if you're a military spouse or a veteran and you're trying to imagine what your life would be like if your partner died, and here you're dealing with the outfall of that. All right, so curious, why don't you talk amongst yourselves? Is there a tool that you haven't seen before? Is there a tool that you would want to use? What do you think would be interesting just to test it out and learn about it? Anybody? Yeah.
Is the Genograms just for money-related issues?
Well, it started with the mental health field, and now other fields are using it. I mean, even doctors ask you questions about your history, right? So it's very kind of similar to that. Yeah. But I like to use it with money. And I like to think of all the different ways I can get people to use their genogram to see the patterns. And like I was the first person in our family to graduate college. So that's, you know, a unique thing, right? It's something different than everybody else. And my grandparents on my dad's side pushed for that. They were like, we want you to be better. And not everybody does. Some people don't want them to. And I still have aunts and uncles and cousins that will call me and ask me for money. I'm like, well, I'll teach you, but not giving you any money.
That's gonna be hard conversations.
It is. It is. Because there's like 3 of us in the family. My mom was 7, and there's 27 grandkids. And there's 3 of us that are doing well. It's the oldest 3. I don't know what happened to the rest of them. I know my sister and brother are terrible with money. So like I always say, if you have 2 people in the same house, one is a spender and one is a saver. It's like a law of average. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you avoid for me, it's kind of the inherent risk when you have someone coming in for financial concerns, especially in my field where they didn't choose to come to see me, they were instructed, and then to apply these, kind of the biases they come with is that I'm wagging my finger at them, or you're giving away too much money, or you're spending too much, or you're too spontaneous, using any of those. And so ideally I'm creating this kind of judgment-free thing, what you're doing, and
right.
Everything's good.
Yeah, you have to frame. A lot of times these kind of things happen because of other reasons. And I would love to help you figure out what is something that's triggering you, what is something that's impacting you that you don't know about yet. And I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you make good decisions. When somebody is voluntold to come in and see us, I had a lot of those. I did all the off-post housing at Fort Myer. That was really fun. I only had one person I had to cancel. But like they would come in and people don't know what they don't know. And we have to help them figure out that, hey, this is not a bad thing, right? And when I worked with the military, I would say my husband, when he was active duty and I met him, he was terrible with money. So he was my first client. If he can do it, I guarantee you can do it. I've seen a lot worse than your situation, you know? That makes them feel better, but have you done anything that you think really helps a lot?
I feel like one of my most useful tools is my own idiocy and my youth. And so what I share with lots of folks, whether it's one-on-one or classes, I made every financial mistake there was to make in my 20s.
Yeah.
When I was a young airman. And I think that kind of lowers the temperature because, in fact, I'll tell them, look, you come to me and tell me how many mistakes you made, I'm going to be that guy that just one-ups you. I was like, oh, let me show you what a real mistake is.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's kind of disarming in that, look, you know, don't be embarrassed. I've been there. You know, I realize there's a lot of humiliation and shame that goes with this. And if they're directed to me, that means that someone else is wagging their finger at them. And so really large dynamic there. So it's kind of bringing the temperature down. And that's generally my go-to is like, look, man, I know where you're at.
Right. So something successful for our people watching the recording, right? Something successful can be just bringing yourself to their level and showing them that, hey, lots of people have done this, myself included. And here's some examples, maybe. Yeah. Anybody else have any examples?